Welcome to today's explainer. I am so glad you're here because today we're unlocking the absolute secrets of infant communication. If you've ever looked at a baby and wondered, what is going on in that rapidly developing brain, and more importantly, how you can actually connect with them, well, you're in the exact right place. We're going to break down the essential strategies for nurturing connections right from day one. We'll be relying entirely on the clear, evidence-based data we have to build a highly practical toolkit that you can literally use immediately. Let me start off by asking you a really critical question. How do you communicate with someone who doesn't use words? Sounds like a riddle, right? But for healthcare professionals, nurses, parents, and caregivers, this isn't a riddle at all. It's a daily, high-stakes reality. When spoken language is totally off the table, we have to rely on a completely different kind of fluency. We need a toolkit that's clinically sound, deeply empathetic, and universally understood by the youngest among us.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to Infant Communication and Decoding the Nonverbal World.
That brings us to our very first major strategy, mastering the slow approach, where patience is key. We're going to structure our time today by walking through the exact chronological journey of a single interaction with an infant. Imagine you're walking into a nursery or a hospital room. The way you handle those first few crucial seconds, it actually sets the entire foundation for everything that follows. Before you even think about picking up an infant or trying to soothe them, you have to consider how you're physically entering their environment. Step 1 is simply to use a slow approach, and step 2 is to allow the infant to get to know the nurse or the caregiver. You see, as adults, we move fast. We're constantly rushing, running through our endless to-do lists, right? But an infant's sensory processing operates on a totally different timeline. Rushing into their line of sight can be incredibly jarring. It puts them instantly on the defensive. Actually, notice how I'm intentionally slowing down my own speaking pace right now? This is exactly what you need to do physically when you enter an infant's space. This patience isn't just about being polite. It's an absolute clinical necessity. By approaching slowly, you're giving that delicate nervous system the time it needs to register you're there, figure out that you're not a threat, and start building that essential bridge of trust.
Once you've successfully managed your approach and entered their space calmly, we transition into the active connection phase, the power of touch and speaking through actions.
Now, this is where we really need to shift our understanding of how infants actively process the world around them. We've got to move past the idea of spoken words and embrace a much more tactile language. Infants respond primarily to the nonverbal communication behaviors of adults. This right here is the fundamental rule of infant interaction. Before your words even register in their developing brains, your physical presence, your posture, your facial expressions, they're all doing the heavy lifting of communication. You're broadcasting signals loud and clear whether you mean to or not. And this brilliantly illustrates what those nonverbal behaviors look like in practice. Holding, rocking, patting, cuddling, touching. I want you to really isolate those action verbs in your mind for a second. Every single one of these actions is like a distinct, powerful word in an infant's vocabulary. Holding provides necessary boundaries and a sense of physical security. Rocking mimics that soothing rhythmic movement they felt back in the womb. Patting, it offers a predictable, grounding beat that can actually help regulate a fast heart rate. So these aren't just sweet little gestures we do to pass the time. No way. They are vital, targeted interventions that directly communicate safety and comfort straight to an infant's brain. Now that we've mastered physical touch, our next crucial step is finding your calming voice and setting the tone.
We absolutely cannot ignore the auditory connection. How you sound to an infant is just as vital as how you physically move around them. Babies are highly, highly attuned to pitch, volume, and cadence. A sharp or loud voice, that can trigger their startle reflex, completely undoing all that slow, patient physical work you just put in. The source material specifically directs us to use a calm, soft, soothing voice. Try it with me for a second. Notice how my voice just dropped a register, how the volume naturally softened, and the hard edges of my words kind of rounded out. This is what a calming, soothing presence actually sounds like in clinical and caregiving practice. You're not just lowering your volume so you don't wake someone up. You're actively projecting safety. You are literally wrapping the infant in a blanket of security through the vibration of your vocal cords.
But, it's not just about the tone itself. It's also about the interaction. We must actively talk and read to infants. You want to combine that newly found soothing vocal tone with active, continuous talking and reading. Now, I get it. It might feel a little bit silly reading a complex book or explaining your day to a literal newborn, but remember this, they aren't digesting the plot of the story. They're digesting you. They're digesting your presence. The rhythmic flow of language, paired with that soft, deliberate delivery, fosters an incredibly deep neural connection and really stimulates their auditory development. Which brings us to our final major phase in this interaction journey, providing comfort and security, specifically handling moments of distress. Let's just face the reality of caregiving for a second. Interactions aren't always going to happen when the infant is perfectly content and well-rested. You need to know exactly what to do when they experience distress, feel overwhelmed, or desperately need reassurance. When an infant is distressed, their primary, most urgent signal is crying. So the crucial point is comparing that signal, the cries, with the caregiver's required toolkit, which has to be immediate responsiveness and the use of security objects. Look, when an infant cries, they aren't trying to manipulate you. They're sounding a biological alarm. They're communicating a critical need. Being highly responsive to those cries is definitely not spoiling the infant. It's answering their absolute only means of calling for help. And in doing so, you're teaching them that the world is a safe, reliable place where their needs will be met. A big part of that immediate responsiveness involves leveraging the tools they already inherently find comforting, allowing security objects like blankets and pacifiers. If an infant already has these items, letting them use them is a vital, highly practical part of providing immediate comfort. You don't always need to reinvent the wheel or try a dozen different complex techniques. If a specific worn-in blanket smells like home, or if a pacifier helps them self-soothe by triggering their suck reflex, use those tools to your advantage to quickly bridge the gap of their distress. Let's bring this all together under our overarching theme today, nurturing connections. We've just walked through 6 incredibly precise, evidence-based strategies derived straight from our source material. Approaching slowly to build that initial trust. Leaning heavily into nonverbal touch, like rocking and holding. Lowering and softening your voice to project calm. Being immediately and compassionately responsive to cries. Actively talking and reading to build neural pathways. And finally, utilizing those existing security objects for comfort. Together, these don't just form a list of tips. They form a comprehensive, completely actionable blueprint for building immediate, lasting trust with the infants in your care. It's not magic. It really isn't. It is a proven, structured method of communication. Which leads me to this final, provocative question for you to ponder long after this explainer ends. Are you ready to truly listen to the nonverbal cues of the infants in your care? As we've seen today, rich, complex communication happens long before the first actual word is ever spoken. Every gentle touch, every slow, deliberate approach, every soft whisper, it's a loud, clear message to a child. The blueprint is right here in front of you. Now it's entirely up to you to apply it in your very next interaction. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep observing, keep learning, and I absolutely cannot wait to see how you use this incredible toolkit.